Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about my story. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, maybe you could walk us through your career and some stories on those jobs. Maybe you could talk about your current goals and your previous failures. Well, I'm very flattered that someone wants to hear about my little slice of the timeline. So, well, I suppose that I can give you some highlights, maybe? Let's talk about the biggest failures and the biggest learnings. Let's do that because I don't really think that I'm not going to be able to keep this at 10 minutes if I need to pull out a slideshow and go through the whole thing. So let's just focus on the things that are at the top of my head. Okay? Does that make sense? Good. So, at my first job, well, it's technically not my first job. Because I started my first job was about 6 months into my education. I was educated here in Gothenburg, uh, and I did some online stuff in coding and related things like that online, as I said, and I had done some hobby programming. I started programming at about 24-ish, somewhere there. So I was in my early 20s, mid 20s there somewhere when I started coding. So I'm not one of those whiz kids who started when they were 8 or 12 or something like that. I had a book on HTML that I never read, if I remember correctly, when I was a kid, but that's about it. So no, there's not going to be a movie about me, I can promise you that. So about 6 months into my education, my teacher took me aside and said, "Hey, Frederick, I have these two guys who they're looking for someone who can." And then he looked a little bit odd at me, and I was like, what? Like, what are they looking for?" Well, I'm just gonna say it. They need someone to do everything. That's what they need. They're two guys who are entrepreneurs, and they need a coder who can basically build their entire company. And I just looked at them, and I kind of just asked him, "And you think I'm ready to do that?" I had literally learned to code like just few months before. Like, well, I knew how to code, but I had nowhere near. Looking back now, I had nowhere near the experience that I would have needed to feel like I could just look him in the face and say, "Yeah, no problems, I got this." So I was scared shitless, but I was very flattered at the same time because he said, "Yeah, but I think that you should have a look at it because I know we've been talking." Because that's the thing I used to tell him. I was very happy to realize that my lifelong underachiever attitude towards education uh, flipped. Like, it turned on a dime the second I started studying to become a programmer. I When I was really really young, I had fairly good grades, and through high school and so forth, I didn't really care. I didn't feel inspired to do anything, so I had some grades that came very naturally, and they were practically all related to things that I could just make up at on spot. I for some reason have been blessed with the ability to talk non-stop and think at the same time. I don't know where that's coming from, but you can probably guess considering that I'm actually sitting here and doing that exact thing. So anything that was related to that sort of thing, I did really well in. Anything that wasn't related to that, I did really, really horribly at. And at the same time, I leveled many, many max level characters in World of Warcraft. So that did take away a bit of time as well, and some grades. But when I got to the university, it flipped immediately. I am still at this point semi proud, at the very least, that I had the top grade in every course, all of them throughout through the entire university, top notch all the way. And so when he came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to take on this job?" it's a startup basically. You're not going to get paid practically anything, but it's something for you to get some experience, because I had told him that my one concern as a software developer is, well, I don't really know how it is to code for real. We just do these exercises, and I want to know how it is to do it for the, like, that's the thing I'm always looking for. I've been this way for my entire life. I really, if you're going to teach me something, you better be damn sure, if you want my attention, that it's relevant to reality. I don't give a shit about your extremely theoretical problems that have no practical value whatsoever. It's interesting to listen to. I always like to listen to someone who is inspiring or someone who is really enthusiastic, but at the end of the day, for me, it always comes back to practical value. I want it to be applicable, to be useful in some fashion, otherwise it's just a mental exercise. And we can do those things as long as there are drinks. So I started taking that on, and then just a few months later, so I'm basically doing that thing, and then it's time for us to graduate and so forth, and I get another job lined up, which is my first real job at an agency, also here in Gothenburg. I've just been working here. So I go in there, and it is, I've told you about this a few times in a few other videos, where this was, to date, it was still the worst job I've ever had. I'm pretty sure, well, not the worst job I've ever had. It's the worst programming job I've ever had. I've been alive for long enough that I had more jobs than this. This was a horrible, horrible environment, and I suffered greatly. Very, very bad. I kind of shudder still. I had massive anxieties, stomach aches, enormous amounts of stress, and it was horrible to go to work. It was absolutely horrible. And the greatest failure, I would say, from my perspective with that job, was that I jumped at the first opportunity that was presented to me because it was convenient to do so. I was offered a position in a job where I wasn't ready to work in that environment. Simply put, I was not ready to be there. They needed someone that was much, much more experienced than I was, and I wasn't there. And I didn't realize that. I could, or rather, it was so, I was so scared of the possibility that I wouldn't make it in this industry, I wouldn't get another job or anything like that, that I just kind of grinded through it, and I suffered enormously until the point where I actually got another offer where I could actually move to another company. And the thing is, I didn't really try to like go to other interviews and things like that, because I was so hell bent on trying to make this work, because it was scary to like get somewhere else and you might get rejected, or you might realize that, oh, this was the only company that you wanted to hire you. So you just go with the safe option, or you try to go with the evil you know versus the unknown, right? And the greatest learning that I had there is one of the things that I have shared with you many times before. Where you work matters a lot when you start. It matters a lot. I cannot stress this enough. It has a major impact on how well you're going to do and how much you're going to educate it. The reason why I know that is because the second I moved to the second place of work, which was a large international company, everything switched for me. I think I learned more in just a few months working there than I ever learned the year or something I worked at the other company. It was slightly more than a year. So had an enormous shift, like a lot of resources. They had like great people. I learned from senior developers that I still count the people that I worked with at that company as some of the most important people that I've ever met. I still meet up with my favorite ones every now and then. We have a few after works and stuff like that. I've actually talked to them several times about maybe we should do a podcast together, because we are so different people and we have different perspectives on programming and so forth. And the age range or the experience range is massive. Like the absolute most senior person on that in that group has like 25 years of experience or something like that. He is everything pretty much that I aspire to be at a personal level. I really look up to that guy a lot, and the other guy is a guy who I count as, I mean, at one point I'm pretty sure that his wife was worried that we had a thing going on. We didn't, but it sure as hell looked like we were heading that way. For me, he's like my brother from another mother. He really is. So the biggest mistake I made in that company, spoiler alert, because I've said this 100 times as well, was that I went into philosopher mode and I started thinking that I could make the world a better place. I thought that I could improve all the things at the same time. And instead of listening and like really trying to take things in, I tried to improve them constantly, like over and over and over. And I think I lost out on a lot of learning that could have been done if I just listened more than I talked. Or, well, I did listen a lot as well, but I really to this day feel like I spent a lot of time trying things out. It wasn't all bad, because the thing is I fucked up so many times that I realized I very quickly learned what's going to work and what's not going to work, especially in front-end world, because that's the thing, right? People kind of allowed me to do whatever I wanted, and I fucked up so much that now I can see where others are going to do the same thing that I did, and I can pass that on, which is nice. So that's the biggest fuck up there, I would say. The biggest learning was for sure that the way that the company works reflects how the system is going to work. That's the biggest learning that I had there. The people that were working there were amazing, but because of the way that the company worked, we simply could not create a system that was as perfect as we wanted it to. We just had to deal with the business model of the company and just do the best of the situation. There was no way for us to create a system or like a design that we could go on Google I/O or some tech talk and say, oh, this is the thing that we built. We could do it for a few things, but for most of it, it was like absolute shit. The system was absolute shit in many areas. Some things were working really well, but a lot of things were really, really horrible. The things that really were working well are things that I am today trying to share with you guys and my current company and like the people that I work with today, because they were world class designed. I would say world-class stuff. They had designed the parts that were working so well, and I mean it is an international company with millions and millions and millions of people using it. So they knew their stuff in this area. And then I moved over to the company that I'm working at right now, and I suppose that the biggest failure at my current company was when I started, I approached the development process and my role within the company in the exact same way that I did at my previous company. And that is a problem, because at my previous company, which is also one of the biggest failures of my career at that company, was that I was very focused on my area. I didn't really look at the bigger picture. I was like, I got a work task and you kind of get into the rhythm of it. I became a code monkey in essence, a very loud and talkative and full of ideas and not listening type of code monkey, but a code monkey, and you just try to churn things out and you need direction constantly, right? And at the job that I work now, when I first started, that was just not it was a no-go. I could not work in that. It was not possible for me to work in that fashion, because the amount of freedom that we got was not just something that was fun to have. It was something that they had to give us, because they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the infrastructure, and all of these things in place in order for you to just be able to kind of plug out and be a code monkey. You needed to take more responsibility and have a more holistic picture and be much more involved and take personal responsibility than I had to do at that job. So you can think of it as, I mean, if you go from a corporate developer to a startup, that is definitely something that you should be aware of, that the mindset of how you do work might have to change. And I wasn't prepared for that. So I really, really, really fucked up. It again came to the point where I needed to talk to my manager, and we had a discussion about, like, he said that he believes that this is going to get better and so forth, but I need to work at it. So I sat down and I made it my personal goal, and this is my biggest learning this far, and which was that if you want to meet success in software development, you have to look at more than just the code that you are writing. You have to understand the company, you have to understand the people, and have a bigger holistic picture. And that's the thing that I focused solely on when at my current job. And I would say that today I'm in a pretty good place. I think that Most of the stuff that we're doing is working out really, really well. The company's great, and my coworkers are great. We have a great working relationship, and I'm very flattered to know that a lot of them actually feel as I am a very good contributor and a very, very good influence on most of the company, and that feels really, really nice. So what I want you to take away from this is that my story is just one of a million other people's story, but it's mine, so that makes it special to me. Uh, all I can tell you is that everybody fucks up, me included. Every single one of us is gonna fuck up, and it's through those fuck ups that you learn how to do better the next time. And trust me when I say this, it doesn't matter how many times you fuck up. If you continue going, you will start to get the hang of things. Have a great day.